Did you hear that hump? Hey, everybody. Already somebody saying get off the stage. How nice. What a warm welcome I'm receiving. Well, welcome everybody. Are you all excited about the first ever RTX Australia? Guys, I can't hear you. Are you excited about the first ever RTX Australia? Guys, I gotta apologize about something. I gotta come clean here. I lied. I could hear you the first time. I did. And, you know, that was a lie, and I'm sorry about that. I feel like I can't start our relationship off on a lie. Relationships have to be based on trust. Ashley just said that's not true, so we have to have a talk now after this. Well, you know, when we were deciding at Rooster Teeth where to hold the first ever international edition of RTX, there was absolutely no debate. We were gonna have RTX in Australia if we went anywhere, and we're so happy to be here. And likewise, when we were deciding who was gonna be our first ever keynote speaker at RTX Australia, equally there was no debate there, and I hope you will join me in welcoming our keynote speaker for the first ever RTX Australia, Hex.
Hi, thank you so much. Good morning and welcome. I have to say it feels pretty surreal to be at an event, an RTX event right here in Australia, but I think just the response, the energy in the room, and the response to this whole event is, you know, pretty clear. The love for Rooster Teeth is pretty strong. We won the opportunity to host the Laser Team premiere in Australia because the crowdfunding support was so big. So that's amazing. I saw the movie last night. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait for you guys to see it too. And hello to everyone who's tuning in online as well. If you're tuning in from around the world, hello from Australia. My name is Stephanie Bendixson. I host a show called Good Game on the ABC here in Australia. We're also online, where I'm better known by my gamer tag, Hex. But I'll tell you a little bit more about me and what I do later on. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me to be your keynote speaker. I'm really honored. I have to say that the first thing I did, though, after accepting the invitation to speak was Google, what is a keynote speech? So I apologize for whatever this turns out to be, but I feel like we're all going to get through it together. So, yeah. I suppose what I kind of wanted to start off with today is why we're all here. You might say, we love Rooster Teeth. This is a Rooster Teeth convention. You do the maths. And sure, I mean, that is a big draw card for a lot of people, but I think Rooster Teeth had a little bit more in mind for this event than just one big RTX love-in, as awesome and as sexy as that sounds. This event really is a celebration of internet culture, of gaming culture, and the content creators who are sharing what they love online. And I think that's really important. Because Australia is a country that struggles to compete in many ways, I think, with commercial and creative industries like film and game development. You know, a lot of our game development studios get shut down. A lot of our great game dev talent has to work overseas. And I think gaming as a whole kind of struggles to, you know, really be acknowledged in wider Australian culture as a valid and worthy medium, and that kind of sucks. But when you look at our community, you can see that there's something different going on there. The gaming community online is massive in scope. There's a reason that some of the most popular YouTube channels out there, you know, center around video games. And right here in Australia, our online presence is growing too. And when we get behind something, we can really make things happen. I think R18AU is a really great example of that. I think this convention is a really great example of that, being here in Australia. And I think what we continue to create and put out there as content creators will start to have a really big impact on the way gaming culture is perceived in Australia. and how gaming and Australian gaming is perceived around the world in turn. And I really do believe that that collective passion, what we watch, what we play, and what we do, will help the industry grow. So I just want you to keep that in mind throughout the weekend. There's a lot of events on here, panels talking about getting into streaming, Twitch streaming, that kind of thing. We're all part of a community that acts as a driving force behind the industry as a whole. And what you put out there and what you create helps shape that. And I think that's kind of, I think it's an exciting concept. So I thought in this talk I would talk a little bit about my role in all of this, what I get to create, and what took me from gamer to games critic and TV presenter. It's a job I am thrilled to get to do every day. What the Good Game team puts out there, it's us in studio, each week takes a phenomenal amount of work from an incredible team of gamers and producers, and being a part of that process is absolutely the most rewarding aspect of my life. But it hasn't been a smooth road to this point, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about my history and how I came into that role, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the history of Good Game itself and its unique place within gaming, Australian gaming culture. So I often get asked, when did you decide that you wanted to do this job? And the answer to that is, I never actively pursued a job like this because it just never occurred to me that it was something that would be a viable option. Just like you ask the same question to a social media strategist if when they were a kid they wanted to grow up and be a social media strategist, they had no idea the job didn't exist. So, likewise, talking about games on TV and the internet wasn't something that was even on my radar as a possible career path. But things are really different now, of course. People can make channels, do Let's Plays, develop a following, but when I started out, things were very different. The other thing is I also had really strict anti-video game parents. I had no consoles growing up. My parents were just really against that kind of thing. So a lot of my early gaming was done in secret or at friends' houses. And the first truly strong connection I had with a game was a multi-user dungeon, or a MUD. Looks like that if you've never seen one before. A lot of you probably have, but it's basically an entirely text-based role-playing game. And I managed to slip this by my parents because, the text kind of threw them a little bit. But when you tell a teenager they can't do something, it tends to have an opposing effect, so I became really, really into this in a massive way. I played it on the library PCs at lunchtime. I started playing at night after my parents went to sleep so that they wouldn't know and so that I could match up with US time zones, and that led to me falling asleep in school, and then the teachers contacted my parents and basically told them that I'd started some kind of weird role-playing cult at school and that I had suffered from an addiction, and long story short, I was sent to therapy, which was actually pretty good because as an angsty teen I had a lot to get off my chest anyway, so it was quite cathartic, but nevertheless it was a weird start to my relationship with video games. Oh, the game was called Lensmore, by the way, if you ever want to check it out. It is really addictive though, I'm warning you. Yeah, you can just play it by a Java applet, or you can download a Mush client. Really cool. So I started playing that when I was about 15, 16, and it still remains one of the most profound gaming experiences of my life. And it represented a time when I just really didn't want to be the person that I was, when I could be this more kind of confident, assertive character that I'd created for myself. That's her there. Eldora, her name was. I drew that, I think, in '99, and I was really into 80s fantasy art, which is why she has massive boobs and no ribcage, so I apologize for that. But yeah, I should also say I'd moved schools a lot at this point, and I'd struggled with the sort of social friendship aspect of my life. I was going through a bit of an intense goth phase, listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails. So gaming for me really was, I guess it was a port in the storm, and it was really a coping mechanism, I suppose. So after that whole nightmare, I kind of lay low for a while, and once I was able to build a decent PC, I started playing games like World of Warcraft, and I eventually got some consoles, moved out of home, started watching this cool show called Good Game, which actually celebrated gaming culture, which was just completely opposite to everything I'd ever encountered. But I think there was always a part of me that sort of linked gaming to something that I should feel guilty about, like it was this lazy pastime, that I shouldn't be spending as much time with it as I did. And I think that's still, quite a common perception from people that don't game, and something that would be really great to change. When I landed the role on Good Game, it was like some kind of surreal dream. I'd been watching the show for a while by this point. I'd sent game reviews into the show's producer after I went for a screen test, and it was weird suddenly sitting in that chair because it was like looking through a window that I was so familiar with, and I'd kind of stepped through that window, and now that window was my home. But you can guess how completely thrilled I was. I mean, imagine what this meant for me, having an entire adolescence of fighting a waste of time, and now all of a sudden, I was talking about them on a TV show that I loved and playing games every day. It was amazing. What I didn't take into account was the internet and the community. So some of you who are familiar with the show may know that when I started, the show had 2 hosts already. And when I was going through the process of being hired, one of the other hosts was involved in the middle of a battle with the ABC, and that resulted in him leaving the show. So instead of joining the 2 hosts, I replaced one of them, and the backlash from this was astronomical. I was female, I was very blonde, I didn't fit the perceived idea of what much of the audience at that time believed a gamer should be. And they were mostly really upset that I'd replaced a host that they loved, understandably. So I went from pure elation to being the subject of such aggressive online hatred and abuse that I was just crying myself to sleep each night. All of my accounts were getting hacked, people were going after all my passwords, people were sending me the most horrible messages. And at this point, by the way, I hadn't even started the job yet. Like, I hadn't even done 1 episode, it was just like announced, and there were photos of me out there, and people were like, die. Yeah, so it was awful. People said I was only hired because I was going to bring some kind of sex appeal to the show, because I had boobs, and they said I was fake and I wasn't a gamer, and that I was a nerd. I wasn't a nerd, and that I'd ruined their favorite show, and that I should kill myself. And a whole host of really gross sexual stuff that, being someone who's like relatively across the internet, you think you've seen it all. I hadn't seen it all, I thought I had, but I learned that week, I saw everything. There's a lot of websites out there now with my face photoshopped onto porn, and I kind of just had to be okay with that and move on, or, give up the job of my dreams. The thing that upset me the most, though, was that I suddenly felt like I had to prove myself, prove that I was a gamer and that I was into nerd culture, and the concept was just too impossible to believe. And that was really frustrating. I know now I should have just shown everyone this photo of me when I was 15. And I think any question of whether or not I was a nerd would have been silenced immediately. And I just want to clarify, this wasn't for anything. I wasn't going to a dress-up party. I just had this outfit and thought I looked really badass in it and just wanted photos for posterity. So, note also the necklace on my head. And that's my real hair, by the way. People think it's a perm, but it's not. Anyway, at this point, I was so depressed by this wall of hatred that I was facing. I was writing reviews and ready to give everything I had to this job, but I was in hell. And I remember saying to Janet Carr, she's the show's executive producer, and she created Good Game. I said, how am I ever going to prove myself to these people? And she said, let your work speak for you, and you won't have to. And that was probably the best advice I've ever received in my life. So life now is really different. I've been hosting Good Game for over 6 years. 6 years. That's 6 years, and I can't even count how many games, how many hours of gaming, how many deaths, how many nerd root plants harvested. And I get to do it next to this guy who has turned out to be one of the greatest friends I could have ever asked for. One of the weirdest, but definitely one of the greatest. But best of all, we have this amazing community, probably some of the best fans and viewers that we could ever ask for. And that's what makes doing this so great. And I get letters from girls now, and women, who write to say how cool it is to see a woman on the show, and that it gives them confidence to the confidence to express their passion for games as well, and that makes me feel really amazing. When our producer, Janet Carr, created the show, she was given a budget of $1,000 to shoot the pilot, which in TV terms is like nothing. But since then, we've moved into a much bigger studio, like one with actual TV lights and stuff, and we get to be a lot more creative and shoot cool things in there. We also have a kids version of the show for younger gamers, Squid Game Spawn Point. It's from our Minecraft special. And we still needed that extra host because I replaced one of them, remember? So we ended up hiring this guy, who can be a bit of a handful, but he knows how to weed out the noobs, so he's all right. We brought Goose on board to be our field reporter, so he explores wider aspects of the gaming community and the industry. But that wasn't enough. Things are changing. People are moving online. It's not just about TV anymore. Gamers are streaming games, and we live in an age of Let's Plays, where people want to watch other people play games. So we started Good Game Pocket, which is hosted by Nick Boy, and that's an entirely separate show that goes on YouTube and streams via Twitch. They've done live events as well. We have our esports show as well, Good Game Well Played, hosted by Hingers. And we've also done a bunch of live stage shows at comedy festivals and other events. And what we've learned from all of this is that it's just, there's no point making something if you're not going to involve your community. You need to involve the people that you're making it for. You know, we don't just have an audience, we really do have a community, people that want to be involved and have an opinion and express their feedback, even if that feedback is photoshopping someone's face into porn. You know, that's an opinion. Regardless, people want to be involved and have that conversation with you. And I think what's so incredible about gaming and internet culture is that everyone can be a part of everything now, and we've found that by responding to that, it's meant that our shows have only continued to grow and expand. Good Game is unique in many ways, partly through how it's able to exist, and that's on the ABC. For those of you who are unaware, our show airs on the, and is funded by the public national broadcaster here in Australia. So I think the reason why there are so few dedicated gaming shows out there on television is because the funding has to come from advertising usually, which leads to product endorsement, which means the show ends up being one long ad. We don't have that problem, so we're very fortunate to be able to remain true and authentic when it comes to our experiences and our opinions. And while we are indeed keeping with the times and going online and streaming, some of the stuff that I'm most proud of is the production work that our team has managed to do to craft episodes that have really highlighted some unique and interesting aspects of gaming. So I just want to show you a little bit of a special episode that we did that looks at how gamers use their experiences with gaming to deal with mental health.
Actual Sunlight is an interactive story about depression.
From the moment the game begins, Evan is questioning the very point of getting out of bed each day, as he feels like his life is going nowhere.
There is that immediate sense of listlessness and the repetitive cycle that every day is the same and nothing ever changes.
But when it's at its worst, I guess it was happening last year, on the way to work, I would feel it mounting, I'd feel it rising, this dread of getting into work and what was going to be happening there. How I'd be performing through the day, conversations I'd be having, and I'd be running over it all in my head. It'd just be this constant track.
If people want to get to know me, they actually add me and all that, and I just feel kind of like, someone wants to get to know me and game with me. That actually has hit something in my heart, because when I meet people face to face, they don't really do that.
So we, as a team, were really proud of this episode because I think it's the kind of lovingly crafted television content that kind of sets us apart from maybe what other people are doing. And we were able to highlight certain developers that were exploring some of these issues in the games that they made, as well as talk to people about their own personal experiences with mental health. In stark contrast to this, we also recently we did an episode that looked at sex and porn and relationships in video games, which I think is also really interesting and important to talk about and have these discussions. And I love that Good Game provides us with a platform through which we can do that. These episodes goes out there, the best part is the discussion that it generates afterwards. So I guess what I'm getting at with all of this is that I have experienced the good, the bad, and the very ugly when it comes to the online gaming community throughout my career. But it's that community, the people that I work with and the gamers that I get to talk to, that is still, without a doubt, the best part of my job. It's what makes it all worthwhile, and where Good Game sits in that community, I think is really unique. And it's unique to Australian gaming culture as well, which I think is really cool. I'm really proud of that. But I can't encourage you enough to put yourself out there and contribute to our gaming culture if you have even the slightest inclination to do so. Because now more than ever, the tools are right there for you with podcasts and YouTube and live streaming. You know, it's so easy to be involved as much or as little as you want to. Because the reality is, for most people out there who don't game, people who make big decisions that affect our industry, you know, their frame of reference for video games is still Call of Duty and GTA, which are both great games, but they're also the games that get the most negative press, and that's the kind of stuff that gets spread around. So when I try to explain to people what I do for a living, you know, and I try to tell them about, for example, the choice consequence system in Mass Effect, or I try to explain the concept of a game like the Stanley Parable, or Everyone's Gone to the Rapture, or Undertale, you know, they can't fathom it. But I actually do believe that the stronger our voices are, and the more prevalent our gaming culture is here in Australia, the better effect it's going to have on people's perception and understanding of gaming, and why we love it so much. And that can only help our industry here as well, because we really want it to thrive. I want to thank you all so much for your time here today. I know you're all super keen and excited for everything that's been planned for the weekend. I know I am. I just wanted to leave you with a little video. It's about 3.5 minutes long, and it's basically just behind the scenes on how we make an episode of Good Game from my perspective. It's super cheesy, so I'm sorry about that, but it's also just kind of a feel-good note to go out on, so I'll let that play for you now. Thanks very much, you guys.